Welcome to No Shame, episode 96. I have an absolute gem of a woman on today. I really am. We've been having a conversation before this and we just had to start it because if we didn't, all the information would be gone. Exactly. So we have a former MEP and ecologist or environmentalist, if you must, Lynn Boylan.
Yeah, it's great. Great to be on. This is brilliant.
It's great. Yeah,
really very cosy, yeah.
We were going to do therapy
nice
sessions. We were like, what can we fit the couches around that would look the same?
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm very impressed.
So we're flying here. So obviously we've got loads to talk about on this, and if you are kind of interested in the stuff that's going on now, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to ask questions about today is not generally going to be my feelings on what I believe in, and I'll tell you if I do and if I don't at that time, but there's so much going on. There's so much mental information and mix up of what's going on these days, Dan. And I trust you. That's the thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and
so no pressure.
I trust you. So I usually what I do is, how the podcast started was actually getting people in that, what do you think about this? And people that actually I know that are not, like, I don't know, plants or all of this, because it used to be easy to get information. I think if you went and got it and you read it in a book, it was probably right, or you went on the internet, you Googled, it was probably right. Like, to me, it's not like that anymore.
No, and the problem as well is that your social media account is completely different to the person beside you, and it's been tailored for you and sending. So it's very hard to get, like, to break out. If you get caught in a bubble of a certain viewpoint, it's really, really hard to break that. Yeah. Whereas years ago, you read newspapers or you listened to the radio together, and then you challenged each other.
Yes.
So you can become very stuck in a view very quickly because it's filtered around you. It's a filter bubble.
Kind of backs it in, doesn't it? Your social media come back in, like how you feel, and like you see even people getting backed into corners, and not only that, then they're coming out with fresh information that they're kind of like at the picking up on their phone again. And some people I feel sorry for, but then some people, we were saying about this, the conspiracy theorist kind of idea, you're mental. They use a lot of this stuff these days, sometimes, or fake news, as you were saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to dismiss people and go, oh, that's, you're what do they call it, the tinfoil hat brigade, yes. Or like that, it's fake news because I don't like it, as opposed to that it is actually fake news. So I always say to people, it's not, like, there is fake news out there, absolutely, there's fake news sites, but I much prefer, not using that term because it's too easy to dismiss just things that you don't like. For me, one of the things I think in Ireland we need is media literacy. Like, that people need to know when you're looking at articles, like, what sites are they coming from? Who's funding those sites? Who's regulating it? And just sort of educate people into stopping for a second and going, hang on, like, why is this popping up in my feed? Or what is the message here? Can I trust it?
That's me all day.
So while the newspapers have a lot of problems, and it depended on who owned the newspaper, would set the agenda, they still had to sort of, conform to certain ethics and standards, and all of that goes out the window because anybody can have a blog post and anybody can have a website and say whatever the hell they want.
It's got the idea of, say, if you have a following now, is what you were saying. If someone, you could have picture this, you could have a crowd, but it's kind of like Donald Trump in a way. Somebody says something really factual, really true, and then you have somebody with a bit of a following, and they're going, fake news. Like, all of a sudden, this one person standing on their own in a vision is not true anymore, because they're like, no, but look at the amount of people that are supporting the person that's...
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And it's like there's a way of just boshing out fake news now and making your own.
Really easy, and fake imageries. Do you know what I mean? Like, even that one where the fake image that came out of the climate strikes, the Friday feature ones, and it was like this field with all plastic bottles and rubbish. And immediately those who don't like to talk about climate change were saying, oh, look at the climate activists left this park in bits. It wasn't. It was from a music festival that happened a year ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't spot that?
It had crossed the world before. Do you know what I mean? It was debunked and kind of going, no, that's actually not true. It's so easy to just put out a picture. And, even a nicer example of this elderly man dancing with a singer on the street. It's in Madrid, but some guy who had a following of 23,000 people said, oh, this is why I love my hometown of London. And it's been retweeted thousands of times, and everyone's going, oh, isn't it lovely? London's great, full of brilliant people. And you're going, it's not London, it's Madrid. It'd
be so easy to just destroy someone these days. And especially anybody that I feel when we were talking about before, that anybody that's coming through to me, they either end up falling down the stairs, or they either end something else that be happening to them. And it's say a great example would be the case when the files were released in that Panama situation with the tax, all the elites and the tax, and they found out that they were actually conspiring with each other to criminally write off tax. The reporter that kind of came through with that, nothing happened after it, but she died.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and there's the number of people who are like journalists that are being killed is increasing all the time now, and happening in European countries. So you've Malta. There recently, there was another in East Europe. A journalist and his girlfriend were murdered. So yeah, it's not a safe job to be a journalist and going after people like that. But it's also why I defend journalists sometimes, because I know there's a hell of a lot of really crap journalists out there who are really biased. But there's a lot. It's not a job, it's not a very well paid job anymore. It's, it's precarious. You don't know. You can get paid for one job, not paid for another. But there are really good journalists out there, but they need to be supported, because some of them are literally putting their lives on the line to get to the truth.
When we were doing the election, the Herald came out to us, and I said to the girl, listen, don't mess me over with this.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't a threat, but it was like, listen, this is the deal. You're going to come, and they're coming into Glenshane with us. And first time we went to Glenshane, well, guess what happens? Scramble, I goes by her on a wheelie. I'm like, please don't make that the front picture, will you? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. and I have to say, the girl was absolutely, she'd never been in a place like Glenshane around before, so she was lovely. She really was. Yeah. But she would have never been in Glenshane.
She was out of her comfort zone.
Oh, absolutely. And I was like, you're grand, we'll look after you. But, like, I was afraid. I was panicking, thinking, like, this can go both ways. She could mix this story to being like, this was this.
Oh, that's it.
But she didn't. She didn't make it a really a good story. And I made sure that I gave her the props on the idea that, listen, this girl was amazing. She told the right story. She told exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
And you don't ask them to tell a different story.
No,
just
it's not exactly. It's just about the truth. Give us a fair shot, and like, that's the thing that I suppose, especially for Shinners, is that there's so much bias against you as a political party that it's almost instinctive to not like journalists. Yeah. But because I studied journalism when I first left school, I just sort of go, lads, they're doing a job, and without them, we don't have a democracy unless we have journalists who are keeping people in power to account. It's that we want them to be ethical and unbiased in doing that job.
Absolutely. The coincidence always hits the Shinners, I think, like when news comes out, it's like, oh, that was just coincidence that happened to be on an election day or something like that. Yeah. They don't give us a thing. How did you get into this? How did you end up where you're sitting on this couch now having a conversation with me? Ooh. So I know you grew up in Tallaght.
Yeah, from Kilnamana. So grew up in Kilnamana. Always loved arguing, as they say.
Well, your household has beautiful arguments in it.
Yeah. Very argumentative teenager, but always very interested in animals and the environment. So it was kind of those mix of those two things, that questioning everything. Do you know what I mean? Women's equality, but they used to slag me and call me Save the Snail. Because before the plastic,
that's a good
I swear to God, because it was like literally she was trying to protect everything, and like before the plastic bag tax came in, I wouldn't have taken plastic bags. Do you know what I mean? I would have just carried me shopping out, and my poor mother, God rest her soul, would be going, "Yeah, they'll think you robbed it," and I was like, "I don't care of my receipt," and I'd walk out with my arms full of shopping. The same, I used to go up to them and complain that their tuna wasn't dolphin friendly. Do you know what I mean? So I was always just sort of passionate about all of these issues.
At the counter being like,
I know, here she comes.
Oh no, run. You know what I mean?
So that's when I moved then down to Kerry. So I studied journalism for a year when I left secondary school and in Ballyfermot, and kind of had notions about that as a journalist you'd go off and be that one uncovering all of the the big stories, and then sort of you realise that, well, it's probably not going to be like that, and you'll end up like working on a local newspaper and covering issues or whatever. So kind of decided to take a little shift, went to UCD then and did environmental studies, and then in order to get a job moved to Kerry. So that's kind of how I ended up down in Kerry for 10 years. So working in the
Kerry. What a place.
Yep, no, it's a beautiful spot, and I had a fantastic job working in the national park, and so it was 10 years there. And I suppose the thing with how I got into politics was I knew the Shinners, so I was always voting for Sinn Féin.
Were you always a Republican?
Always. Not from a Republican family, but always just liked the messaging because I loved my history and I loved, left-wing politics. So for me, Sinn Féin was the perfect match. And so, I used to tell my sister when she was 18 and I was 16, I'd be going, I'll go up and show you who to vote for. Like, she couldn't care less. She was like, I don't know who to vote for. Right? So I'd be going, here, I'll go in with you and tell you who to vote. So I could actually say I was voting Sinn Féin since I was 16.
Same as me, because I used to be saying to me ma, filling
here's who you're voting for. So when I was down in Kerry, I had never joined the party, but just would have voted for them. And I got to know guy who was in Sinn Féin, and we were in every Friday night, he'd be in the same pub, and I'd go up and I'd give him an earful and go, do you know what, you're doing feck all, never sees about the place, never see anything, North Kerry, Martin Ferris is great, but I said, there's nothing happening here in South Kerry.
You were one of them, Lynn.
People see you coming.
Man, I want to have a point.
Avoid. Yeah, so every Friday that was, so one Saturday morning I woke up and there was an envelope pushed through the door with a membership form in it, and it basically said, either join us or shut up. Yeah. So I kind of thought, actually, do you know what? That's pretty fair challenge. Like,
fair play to you.
So joined and became their press officer, I think, within 2 weeks. I kind of let it slip that I had done journalism. They're like, perfect, you're now our press officer. So then I was asked to run in 2007 in the general elections. But basically to give people the choice to vote for Sinn Féin. It wasn't like I was ever going to get elected. Certainly not as a Jacqueline in Kerry.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
If you had it would have been
It would have been a miracle, yeah. So I stood for the party and then stood again in 2009 for the locals, again unsuccessfully. And then that's kind of when the crash happened and I moved back to Dublin, and because I sort of lost my job in the National Park and moved back home. And,
what was it like with the how not getting disheartened from the two elections? Because like I did one, and I know for the fact that if I was standing there, now listen, it was in Tallaght, it was, I won't say it was unfair, but kind of home advantage, I had everything going for me. Alright, he was getting elected, but like to stand there and to be like count coming through, and for it to get close and then up and down and then to not get it, like
it's it's
like a loss, is it?
Well, I think when you knew you weren't getting elected in the general, so I suppose psychologically you'd prepared yourself. You're going, right now we're going to give it a good shot, but I'm not getting elected. But then in the locals you really thought you were, and you actually did worse than you did in the general. So you're sort of going, all right, I've had 2 years of actually working for the community and they don't want you.
They don't want you.
So yeah, it's kind of take a bit of a kicking, but again, I suppose it was because the job and all of the things, I moved back to Dublin and I just thought, I'm just going to take a break, step away, from the party and sort of just look for work. I was back living at home with my parents, which in your 30s is not the easiest thing to do. So
it's probably 70% of the country now.
Exactly. Now it's more common.
500,000 people I heard that. The numbers.
During the election, it was every single estate we went to, no matter where you were in Dublin. It was either the kid themselves, do you know what I mean? So the adult child, or the parents who were on the door saying to you, I like it. It's the pressure, the stress it's putting on families. So I was going to take a break, and I met Owen O'Brien in 2010, January 2010, for lunch. And I'm still stuck with him now.
It must be a good cook.
And so I met him for lunch, and so do you know what I mean that? And he told the Sinn Féin people in Tallaght, he was like, Lynn Boylan, who ran for us down in Kerry, is back living at home in Kilnamanagh, and no one's approached her to rejoin the party. So I wasn't allowed to hide for too long.
That's what I was about to say. They sussed you.
They tracked me down, and
which was a good thing.
It really was, yeah.
It was a good thing, because then you went on to...
Then I went on to top the poll in 2014, and spent 5 years in the European Parliament. So.
How did that feel? The idea, especially after the losses? Because I done a podcast in England with a guy named Jay Hutton as well, and we were talking about the idea of Insta world, Insta everything, where people only see success. They don't publish their losses.
Yeah. So
but to me, you have to it's like you have to lose a final to win a final in a way.
And I looked at a lot of because 2014 obviously was our most successful election for Sinn Féin, and I did see some people who ran. It was their first time. Some people who were only in the campaign 6 weeks and were getting elected, and there was part of me kind of going, I'm delighted for them all. But also you sort of worry because it came so easy. Are you, having lost makes you really want it and really appreciate it when you get it. Yeah. So, and I think it's the point you're making about Insta, for young people, there's huge pressure on them because all they see is this perfect everybody puts up their perfect version of their life as opposed to what the reality is. So I'm quite open about talking about the fact that I'd lost 2 elections and even now that I've lost another one.
But this one,
life goes on.
But this one is so shocking, right? Because your loss of that seat kind of disheartened me a little bit, and like we done a little bit of canvassing together as well, blotching around Jobstown.
That's right. Yeah,
that was the best estate out here, just saying, wasn't it?
The little baby Bijons.
Oh yeah,
best day ever.
We bumped into a load of puppies.
It peed down my arm, but I didn't care.
Yeah, we're going around doing elections and she picks one up and put it down her arm. Loads of puppies, but it was brilliant, wasn't it?
It was great.
But it was a great little day. That was a great election. There was a great buzz around that. And it was great to get you out pushing and seeing how it works as well, because I'm very much a beginner knocking on the doors, and now but I wouldn't be a beginner in the idea of having discussions and like I'm opinionated in a way that I kind of research my opinion and research what I'm doing, and I don't just throw it out because somebody else has it. So say the situation. It's different
when you're selling yourself.
Yeah,
that's the thing. When you're an election candidate, you're actually just having to sell yourself. It's easy to go along with someone else and go, "Here, will you vote for Paddy?" Dead easy. Will you vote for me? I know, this was something really needy about it.
Yeah. Please, mate, help me all my life.
I'm the best, I swear.
So then the idea of like you losing it kind of disheartened me, because I was like, I know how hard you worked in there, but not only that, to see the people that are absolute tyrants getting in there over you was like, I was like shaking, call, do something.
I know.
It's not like there's people getting in there. So say. I won't mention any names. I should, but
I know
there's some people in there that like literally they should not be in there. They don't care about it, basically.
No, I mean, and given the scandals that we had seen, certain individuals, do you know what I mean, that, you know, whatever role they played in those scandals, that it didn't seem to affect the vote. It is very disheartening. I've gone through a roller coaster of emotions of, you know. I was saying this to yourself earlier, like that you're sitting there and you're getting all these tweets and all, and it's really lovely because not very many politicians, when you lose a seat, have a public outpouring of people going, "Oh, that's a real shame, you know, really sorry to see you lose your seat." But then the next morning I wake up and go, "Did you vote for me though?" Do you know? And
listen, I'm like that
I don't like people, and do you know what I mean? So you're just this real emotional roller coaster of just sort of going, yeah, I'd better probably taking a few weeks off and not, you know.
I'm not saying hide my phone.
Yeah, until I'm ready to talk to people without telling them what I really think about them.
Because even at the local, and I've been trying to explain this to people, especially on the podcast, because the day goes by, right, in the election, they're like, "Oh yeah, elections. Oh no, actually I was going to the park that day, I couldn't vote." And I'm like, it's 5 minutes in a situation, right, where so Louise Dunn like was close to not getting her seat. Now, what Louise Dunn is like,
has worked
and
so
you don't
hard.
understand.
Yeah.
And the episode area that she represents is, you don't know how lost you would be without this woman. Now, and people say to me, "But what have you done?" And I'm like, "I had 2 council meetings, but here's the list, right, of what I can give you. But I don't have to be standing here giving you a list, because what have you done?" That's what I'd be saying, you know, because people think that, like, yeah, but you're getting voted in now and you're getting all your money. And it's like, my money. No. Yeah, mate, do you understand, if I didn't have my job or my gym or all stuff like that, I couldn't rent an accommodation. Like, so say on the local council one, say it's 18 grand. Like, I couldn't rent an apartment for me and my family. And
I don't think people realise how poorly paid councillors are. Like, whatever MEPs are very well paid, like too well paid. I mean, and Sinn Féin has always voted to reduce the expenses and the salaries of MEPs. Of course, Fine Gael and the rest of the parties vote against it. But like councillors, do you know what I mean? Councillors, the money is really awful. You're the one at the front line of dealing with, especially the housing situation. Do you know what I mean? Like, and people just seem to have this notion, like there's a real cynicism about politics in Ireland at the moment, and I think it's quite worrying, because there are a lot of good politicians out there, not putting ourselves aside, because you know, but lots of good politicians in different parties, and everybody's tarred with the same brush, that you're all in it for money, you don't care, you only see you at election. And like, well, if that's the approach and people stop voting and stop trusting their politicians, well then, like, that's a really worrying trend, which we've seen in this election, people not going out to vote. And
the thing is, people think like, right, I'm not going to vote for you now. And I'm like, right, sound, you're not voting for me. I don't say you're voting for change, you're voting for prevention. Because this has been a bad, like, voting for change, we're not close to that yet. You get what I mean? I feel like on the message, we're voting for to stop this getting worse, basically.
Mitigate the damage for you. Like, so we're holding back that tide.
The council now is like a full Fianna Gael council now, you know? So, like, and the thing is, the idea for putting up the property tax, it was already kind of put in, and other councils, I can see that they're asking, will they, like, even teasing with it out there now. They don't do it.
Give it a year.
Do you know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden, we're going to be paying taxes, and the rents are going to go up, and the boilers are going to be getting charged for fixing, and they're going to be going to me, you're a scumbag, Paddy. You know what I mean? Away, like, mate, listen, when I told you and I knocked at your door personally and said, get out and vote, and he's like, why should I vote for you? What did you ever do for me? Well, probably now I've done nothing for you, right? But you need to start realising what I'm saying. I'm not going at your door to give you a message here. If them other boys get in, they don't care about you, and that's just being out straight. Like,
you won't know what's going to happen. Yeah, you won't know what's coming. And like, and I suppose for people who go, oh, we voted for you in like 2011, and then we voted for you in 2014, and my life is still crap. Do you know what I mean? And you're sort of having to explain to people, and that can sound like you're, you know, I'm not patronising people, but like that, you're sort of going, yeah, but we're not in government.
Well, no.
Do you know what I mean? We're not in there, so we can only do so much. And when we're in the council, again, you're not, like, you don't have all of the seats, so you're trying your best. But believe me, if the alternative gets in there, you won't know what's hit you.
Absolutely.
You know, we are holding back that tide. And that's kind of how you sort of trying to get that message through to people, that don't give up. Because if you give up, that's exactly what they want. They want communities like Tallaght, like North Clondalk and like Ballymun to just not go out and vote.
No, because it suits them. It suits
them perfectly. They can just forget about it.
So during the week, we mentioned on the podcast as well about the wetlands. So the wetlands that happened here. So you're probably the best person to have on for that. I know you communicate with Collie. Actually, I tried to get Collie on as well with you, but I'd say he's just leave me alone now, because you know everybody ringing and stuff like that. So obviously this situation now, and a lot of the parties that say would have been involved in this, so in my area committee meeting then, there would have been different, a few of us there, but say the Green Party in the council, for example, the Green Party didn't take up environment. Like, I can't get this in my head what this means. So they don't have the SPC that like is environment. But this is the Green Party. Yeah. And I'm like, so the Green Party obviously would have been on the scene for the wetlands that happened. So the county council didn't announce, but they dumped silt into an area in the park that had been previously dumped silt, and kind of accidentally made this habitat that was so it's rewilded. So this area, it's a wetland. So, and like wetlands, you know, so the ponds, and then you have obviously flooding, and the area is kind of marshy. But it had rewilded naturally. So because there would be no silt dumped on it for a long time, you had all these animals basically just came in and took over, you know, so your frogs, your newts, bats, lots of different insects and invertebrates that just sort of recolonised the site, and it became a really like important habitat. Do you mean that needed protection, and actually got the protection? That's I suppose where Collie is so frustrated. He'd gone to South Dublin County Council, they had made them aware of it, spoken to them, got the protection to say that this area needs to be protected now because there's so many species that are protected species on it. And some, like the left arm wasn't talking to the right arm in South Dublin County Council, and they just came, dredged the lakes and dumped all of that material on top of basically the habitat, but all of the animals that were there as well. So they didn't stand a chance. You know, tons of soil being dumped on top of them. So, like, I was listening to Collie on the radio, and you could hear the devastation in his voice. Do you know what I mean? He was passionate about it, but it's also, I suppose, the key thing for him is like, look, nobody wants heads on a stick. What we want is the site to be restored. You know, and I think that's the lesson, and it wouldn't have happened in another area, and I think that's really important. Like the fact that they treated that protected area like in Tallaght that way. Do you know what I mean? They shouldn't. Like, why shouldn't people in Tallaght have, you know, natural environments and habitats that have all of these wonderful species that, you know, as a kid, I remember going collecting frogs. Don't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there were so many of them when you were a kid. Like, you just collected your tadpoles and watched them grow. I was only telling my young fella about this the other day, and it would have been like I call it Watergate Park, because Sean Walsh Park is not like Sean Walsh was a crooked TD. If people don't know that, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so don't call it that. So it's the truth. It's the truth. But there's like a park named after the man. Still, you know.
But it's just, you know, why, like, we need to have, like, kids in Tallaght need to have access to all of these. Do you know what I mean? And this site, like, I suppose the plan was that you could bring schools up and they were going to put a boardwalk on it so that they could go and observe it without damaging it, but actually see all of the wildlife. And all of that's just been destroyed overnight.
That idea, like
you know, and taken away from them. Yeah.
Where they have the walk-ins and stuff like that, so people couldn't understand what it is.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, I think that's the key message that he wants to get out. Is he like the complaints have gone into the National Parks and Wildlife Service, you know, and anybody can make a complaint about what's happened.
Not just to me.
Yeah, because there is laws here. Do you know what I mean? So let them know that you're really unhappy about it. But the key thing is it has to be restored.
So we go back to the council thing. So say, so I actually sussed this on Saturday when it happened. Like, so it happened on Saturday early, I think it was.
Yeah.
So I sussed it on Saturday, but a lot of people kind of like, it came to news on the Sunday for some people now, especially for some of the parties. So I was down at that spot. A video calling colleague while we were there, and like saying, like, show me which spot it is, tell me what to do, where will I go? So I went out to the council and we organised it for Monday. So we got a response off the council, but then when the area committee meeting happened to be the first ones that was in with the management.
Okay.
So there was nothing else done. So that's all it was about. Another parties actually came in and things like that. So what I won't say what I got them to do, but the idea is, my explanation was that we now have a situation where this has been highlighted, what this actually can benefit and what was in the area. Because then you have people, like I had my own son saying to me, I never knew that was there.
I know.
Or I would have went down if that was there. So we have got kind of a positive out of this in a way.
Yeah.
And not only that, the first statement that the council released, they did say, listen, we will release another statement and we will try to kind of compensate this situation to build this up again. So there is a sort of a positive coming out of it, where the council are willing now that how beneficial this actually was for the area, and they're willing to pump.
And how bad PR it was for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're willing to put it. And then the thing I noticed about this, well, a lot of the councillors, I won't name any names, but like the amount of PR that they, what? There's a PR opportunity, and they run towards it. This is probably my first time seeing this happening, and I was a little bit disheartened.
Oh yeah, no, and there, it does make you a bit cynical. You know, that people jump on bandwagons all the time, and it, like, for me, the tell thing is, I've no issue if everybody wants to go down and talk about what happened, because it's right. I mean, everybody should be highlighting it, but it's the follow through. And are you going to be still there in a week's time, in a month's time, in a year's time, keeping on the council's back and going, what's happening with the wetland? Do you know what I mean? We need it restored. It can be saved. If that soil is taken off, you know, there's eggs of invertebrates that are still there under that silt. There's seeds of plants. They take that silt off. That would quickly rewild again. And that's what... So fine, go down, make your video, put out your press statement, but don't walk away. No, keep up in the work. And that's, I suppose, what distinguishes, I suppose, those politicians who are in it for the right reasons and those who are in it just purely for their own personal gain. And, you know, you'll see yourself who's still there in 6 months' time. Yeah, there's a great saying in martial arts that comes from Chris Hoffer, is like a high-level guy. He's an oldie of the game, you know, and he says, it's not who's good, it's who's left. Yeah. And that really is a true saying, isn't it? He uses another one, he says, a gram of prevention is worth an ounce of cure. Yeah. He uses these kind of sayings. And it's dead right. I mean, because over the 5 years I was elected, there were campaigns you worked on, and you needed the support of all political parties, you know, and you had to go to them and say, look, I need your help here. Like, we have to work together. This is a non-political issue. Like the Stardust is, for one example, you know, Ibrahim Halawa. So there's lots of those kind of issues where I go, look, we all have to cooperate. But at the same time, you know, it ends up that you end up doing, like, you're doing the heavy lifting on it, and campaigning on it. Someone else can so I mean, cooperation is good, but it's the cynical politicians who show up for the photograph. That's and then the part that I don't like, where like, we're all going to work together, but it's like, yeah, but I'm getting the credit for it. Yeah, so long as I get my photo in, you're like going, I don't care, like, don't. So obviously we've talked about the idea of information being mixed up now and trained in twins. So this Greta situation. So people are, there's did you say there's 98% of scientists that agree with climate change, and there's 2% that are agreeing with not with it. So only last week though, as I said, there's there was about 2 scientists, Irish scientists, that had said that they debunked this. And then the thing that I was like, yeah, well, loads of people would have said this, but then it was weird that I found that Ecologists had took away their invitations, and not only that, then they said you can get your invitations if you get your college, if you get your insurance. And then when they turned up with the insurance to speak about this, the insurance is not valid, and now people won't take them on and podcast what they're saying. To me, it's usually like, I need to, like,
Why won't he let them say what they're saying?
Yeah, I suppose I would question, like, who's funding them? Do you know what I mean? To do their science? Like, so if they're scientists and, like, carrying out any research costs huge money, like third level institutions will tell you they're crying out for funding. So you do question, like, well, where are they doing their science? Who's funding the science, first of all? Because, like, we've reached the point now where, as you said, 98% of the scientific community that work in this area are all in agreement that not only is climate change real, it's humans who are responsible. We are messing up the planet, and it's happening at a faster rate than we ever thought. And the problem is, you reach a tipping point, there's no going back.
No going back.
Yeah, and that's where that 12 years comes into it. So, like, you know, we can argue about the speed at which it's happening, you know, whether it's 12 years, whether it could be 20 years, but the science itself on climate change, like the entire scientific community across the world are in agreement. Climate change is real.
There was I was reading a thing yesterday that was wrote in 1922, and they were talking about how the waters were too warm for penguins to swim in. It's actually cooler now and in a better condition than it was 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's always been cycles. So we've had where you would have tropical, you know, where Ireland could have been tropical, and then you have ice ages and that. The issue with climate change now is the speed at which it's happening.
Right.
And the level across the globe. So that's the key difference. And it tracks from the Industrial Revolution, when we started ramping up, you know, I suppose from going and just burning the little fires to steam engines and burning coal, and then from coal to oil and gas and all the other fossil fuels.
The amount of cars now compared to
do you mean the amount of cars, all of that, it's tracked. You can see it on a graph. Do you mean that from that point, and the amount of carbon going up? So yeah, people can always point and go, oh, but sure, we had an ice age. Yeah, we did. And yeah, we had tropical waters in different parts that are no longer tropical. The issue is that it's happening at such a speed, and that it has that correlation between man's activity. Yeah. Man's
activity and that. And then, so say about the idea of, so in 1977, the Times magazine put on the front of it that there was a global cooling, which was occurring. And then I think not too long ago, they put the front of the magazine was global warming.
Yeah, I mean, like, and there's different theories as to why they went from, like, changed the term global warming to climate change, you know, and that some people are saying they do that because it's a less offensive climate change. It doesn't put the fear of God into you, as, like, the planet is heating up here. Those of us who are very active on climate change would say, no, we've moved on even from climate change now. It's climate emergency or climate breakdown. Like, we are in crisis point. And the problem, I think, is that it tends to be seen as a very middle class issue and just something that, you know, geeks and nerds or hippies, you know what I mean, should be interested in. But it's working class communities in Ireland, working class communities across the world who will suffer most from climate change, because they're not going to be the ones who are going to be able to move house to higher ground. They're not going to be the ones who are going to be able to get insurance if they live in floodplains.
Except for Tallaght, we're sorted. Don't
worry
about this, boys. We will live on, we will.
Dublin Mountains.
We will be the hope of this country in no time.
I think if you've seen that map that was produced about the possibility, Mullingar will be laughing all the way, going, oh yeah, yes, they're slagging us for years.
If any of you hotheads want to rent a room in Jobstown, I have it. It's $7,000 a week.
Yeah, I mean, even, like, you see as in, like, the forest fires they had in California. And, like, I suppose America is such an extreme example because it's capitalism on steroids in America. Yeah. But, like, now, if you were a millionaire living in California, you can live in your gated community. You can have your own private fire service that will come out, do you know what I mean, and protect you. You can have bunkers that you can go down and survive in the fling. The ordinary Joe Soap who's going into work and working in a shop, do you know what I mean? Yes. Or bus drivers, they can't afford that, so they just get wiped out. So it's really important that those of us who are on the left, do you know what I mean, and working in those communities, get people on board as to why they need to take action, but also because they shouldn't be the ones that are made to pay for it, which we're seeing with the carbon tax.
This is what we're saying, yeah.
You know, whereas it's, you know, the big polluters have destroyed it. I love the analogy. It was Dave Gibney from Mandate. We were talking about this the other day, and he was saying when the banking crisis happened, right, when the banks crashed, who paid the bill? The ordinary Joe Soap was asked to pick up the tab. We now have climate change. The big polluters, the oil companies, the gas companies, the pharmacy. Do you mean all these companies that have been destroying our planet? And who's going to pay the bill? Again, the ordinary Joe Soap. And that's why we need people to get agitated and not to fall into the trap of going, it's not real because I don't like it. Do you know what I mean? I don't like the message. No, get active and make sure that when we deal with climate change, we deal with it fairly and that ordinary people don't have to pay the bill.
But these massive companies, like, how do they get out of the idea of, like, the measure of carbon coming out of my house? And then, and not only again, then the idea of carbon being that harmful in a way. Do you know what I mean? I've heard people saying the argument being like, well, like, carbon, we need carbon. So if we zeroed all it, so the ABC is, what's that new party? I don't know. There's a new party going on again. It's like
the
Rise Up, I think it's called. Paul Murphy.
Oh,
another party. I can't remember which one they had. But they said by 2030 now they want zero carbon. I'm saying to myself, so what did the trees going to read? Like, did the trees die then?
Yeah, no, so it's basically it's carbon neutrality. So it's a balance, right? So we have, the planet was perfectly balanced, do you know what I mean? With humans there, we were all going about, and then that industrial area where we, you know, started burning and finding more and more fossil fuels and burning them, putting more cars on the road, buying more stuff.
And making, like we went backwards. Am I right in saying, like, we had glass bottles, we had electric milkmen, we had sweets in tubs that came in
disposable
bags.
lifestyle. Yeah, so it's about the balance. So of course you're not going to remove carbon completely. It's that idea that it's a perfect balance of, we need more trees to draw the carbon dioxide down, but we need to stop pumping so much of it out. So, of course, you're never going to remove carbon completely from it, but it is about trying to restore that balance that we had got. You know,
which tree is taking it in?
Trees taking it in, yeah. We're breeding it out, they're breeding it in. Do you mean? But it's the fossil fuels. We have to leave what's there now in the ground. If we continue to extract those fossil fuels and burn them, like, we're literally living as if we have the resources of 5 planets.
Yeah.
Each and every one of us. And, like, you don't need to be a genius to think at some point that's going to be a problem. Do you know what I mean? If you're living like you have 5 planets of resources to live with.
Yeah, you're just a greedy fucker.
So we all need to make changes. But like, part of me as well is that there's a real positivity about dealing with climate change. And it's always focusing on, the way it's portrayed in the media is, oh God, this is going to be awful. You know, people want us to go back to the way it was, like in the dark ages. And it's like, no, there's great advantages. One of the things, like, that a lot of us are saying is we go back to a 4-day week. Right, reduce people's working week. Because we stop looking at the economies around GDP and always being growth. You know what I mean? Let's slow down.
Absolutely.
Stop.
Development.
And slow down. Do you know what I mean? Growth. So, like, I'm a big supporter of the idea of the 4-day week. Do you know what I mean? So that, and the idea that also deals with this whole problem of automation. Do you know what I mean? Because people work less, they've more time to spend with their families, more time for their mental health,
more time to spend money as well. Like,
well, we don't want them spending money. We want to slow down. less stuff. But even just like food, you know, people don't think about where everything comes from. If you were actually charged the real price for the avocado that's flown from, do you know what I mean, Mexico to be here, or any foods, we don't factor in the real cost of the stuff that we have, because everything has become so cheap and we take that for granted. Whereas, you know, years ago you got your coat and it was your one winter coat, you know. So there, you know, I'm not saying we go back to just that can't change your clothes that much, but we do need to slow down. We need to buy less stuff. But even like the cars, you know, if you took cars off the city, out of the city, do you know what I mean? And made the city a place for people again.
Or just walking.
It would be really positive. Like, you know, you see it when you go to European cities where they have big plazas. And I mean, and it's not just warm countries. Other countries, Denmark and places like that, have plazas where people just sit out. People then spend more time intergenerational. You know, even grandparents, like older people come out onto the street. Here you're terrified. Like
Amsterdam has bikes and trams and
pedestrians.
Stuff,
people just out. Just
pedestrians.
Let's reclaim the public space for people, not for cars.
Yeah, I agree. I was looking at something the other day, and it was about oil not being non-renewable. So it was saying about a lot of the oil banks in California that they cleared them out. They cleared out the oil springs, say, that they had dug for, and they left them. And then they came back for 5-6 years later, and they had regenerated. So they'd filled back up in a way.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I don't know. I'd have to check that one out. I'd have to check out that source.
And I went down a little bit of it, and I was like, the only person that would, like, it would be benefiting, it wouldn't be benefiting the oil companies. So even that for to come out, I was like, this is suspect. And as I said, I watch things like that where I'm like, I know for a fact that if that was like if oil was in abundance, if oil was like water, say, in a way, you know what I mean, to us in a way. Now water's not in abundance either. It has to be treated and it has to be.
Yeah. And if we keep going the way we're going, we'll have wars for water.
Yeah, and that'd be the biggest war because that would be it will engage your primal need. It will engage a part of you in a war that you'll never see. Like it'd be like
unlike oil. Yeah, do you mean that everybody will fight for their kids' right on it because it crosses boundaries? You know,
Absolutely.
One country does like we're an island, so we're in that privileged position. But like there's loads of conflicts have been caused because one country decides to dam a river. And that there's in other countries depending on that river coming through, So, water is going to be a huge problem in the future if we continue the way we're going.
That won't be an oil war. That will be like, as I said, a primal war. That will be a need. It will motivate people because they need to drink water.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You can't survive without water. Like you can survive longer without food, but you can't survive without water. So but no, I just think that we need to talk about climate change in a really positive way.
No, I do agree with you, but I have to question the idea of, as I said, the publicisation of this of say this Greta, right? Now, as I said, I'm on the fence with it because I'm still like I'm watching, you know what I mean? I'm watching what's going on.
Yeah.
The idea like people have made great points. Okay, sound great. Why aren't you fighting against your youth? Why aren't you giving out to, not saying to the parents, you stole my thing in a way? I think people are a little bit offended by that because I know my 16-year-old came in and like, get up to them fucking stairs now, you're grounded for a week, you know what I mean? But then everyone, and something I've noticed about every time she says something, that if it was a bald man in a suit saying it, they wouldn't be clapped so much. Like sometimes she says words that drop and then every single thing is a clap. Now I don't understand this, but then the other, why hasn't she gone after her own kind of age group regarding, like, they probably are the worst carbon footprint that has come. They change the phone every year. The clothes, they have millions of sets of clothes, shoes, and they are the ones that like consume plastic. They want the conveniences. So why hasn't it been like where she's not only just going after like kind of say the big issue, but the idea of like talking to her own age, because
but she's inspired her own age. So she's inspired them to come out, and we always criticise young people for not voting or not getting active, and then when they come out, we're criticising them for coming out and being active. So I think what she's done for her own age is she's inspired them and given them a role model that isn't about just consumerism or isn't, somebody who's famous because they went on some reality TV show. So she's inspired her own generation to come out, right? And I think that's really powerful that this young girl could do that and have millions of people come out into the streets. I liked the way she got annoyed with because for me it reflects the frustration of those of us who are desperate for people to act, the politicians to act, is going, you're not doing it. You're coming along and you can pat me on the head and go, you're doing a great job, Greta, stand in a photograph with me. But at the end of the day, you'll walk off and then go, I should scram business as usual. So I think that speech really reflected her frustration, like going, I am sick and tired of listening to people telling me I'm doing great and I'm an inspiration and they're not doing anything about it. So I thought it was really powerful. But like, she's not going to be the saviour of the world. Do you know what I mean? But she has inspired her own generation. And you're right, young people want all of the stuff. But I think that's changing. I think they're starting to join the dots that they can't continue because it's their future. Like, they're looking at the cold face and going, what's the world going to be like by the time I'm 30? It's this pretty scary thought for them. So I think they're shifting their mind and they're starting to join the dots about consumerism and about all the stuff. But at the end of the day, it can't be done by individuals. So even if all the young people stopped and said, I'm not buying any more phones, or I'm not buying my, throwaway fashion, that's not going to fix the problem, because the entire world is built around making it really difficult for you to live green. Do you know what I mean? It's everything goes against you to try. It's a real challenge. And that's why for politicians, they're the ones who have to fix it, and you have to have system change. And that's what I say, it's system change, not climate change. We need to radically change the system we have. And I would say smash capitalism, but
in an emergency. It was actually, I was listening to a thing yesterday driving through Liverpool, and it was like Mr. Recycle on the radio, right? It was one of these, it was cool. It was like Truth or Faction, right? So I'll give you a few of them.
Okay.
So,
God, am I going to be tested now?
Is it true that you can recycle a pizza box?
I don't think you can. They do recycle them, but there are huge problems around contact materials and petroleum going into your food.
Yes.
Yes.
True. You can't. You have to be careful. You can recycle everything that has a circle recycle arrow on it.
Now, there's a huge debate about the circle logo on it because it pretty much goes on everything. And technically, it would depend on who is taking your bins, who is dealing with your waste, and certain companies can recycle those things, certain companies can't. So the argument in a lot of the environmental sector is we need to get rid of that logo because it's completely confusing for people. Yeah.
If you have a recycling bin and you put a piece in that cannot be recycled, is it true or false that you can take it out and recycle it, or you can leave it in and it all gets recycled together?
It depends on what it is. So you can corrupt a bin and destroy everything that's in that if you put, like if it's got food or something on it, which is why you wash your recycling before you put it into the bin.
Answer.
Yeah.
All flawless. Three flawless. Yeah. I kept them for you from yesterday.
But here's another point, right? Because recycling is important, okay? And I do it and I'm really diligent about it.
Sorry, I have a fourth question for you.
Okay, go on.
You go on.
But we need to reduce the amount of waste in the first place, right? So there was a story on the news today about the deposit return bottle machine in Monaghan. So it's one of the tidy towns up there have gotten one of these machines where you pay your 10 cent on the bottle when you buy it. You bring it back to the shop, you put it in. Some of us would remember from years ago they had it in Ireland, and you get your token and you cash it in the supermarket, right? They have them in Germany and Sweden and Finland. Like most European countries have these. They're called deposit return. They remove the rubbish on the ground, but like when we were kids, we used to collect the cans and everything and send them in. But we don't have them in Ireland because industry runs our recycling. So Repack is industry led. It's funded by industry, and they don't want deposit return because it's easier for them to just have a new bottle or a new can.
Doing it, yep.
Do you mean where rather than having to deal with taking the bottle and cleaning it and reusing it? So we've one now up in Monaghan, but it was the tidy towns who got it. But we should have them across the country. Reuse stuff as opposed to recycling. Because when you put it into the recycling bin, it has to be melted down. So even if you did it perfect, right, you're the best recycler ever, gold star, it has to be melted down. That requires energy. It then has to be reformed into something else. Yeah. Usually not something that can hold food because it's probably been contaminated with different chemicals. So all of that's, energy intensive as opposed to just reducing the waste in the first place, going back to like the, bottles over plastic, glass bottles rather than plastic, and just less plastic in the first place. So we should be recycling less. Well, do you mean recycle? We should have less to recycle.
Less to recycle it, because that was the question. It was like, because there's these theories that get thrown out, and it's the information that gets thrown in with the truth sometimes it's just, and some people walk away, some people figure it out and figure out what's going on. The idea people would say, but when you recycle, it costs more energy to recycle that stuff than to actually put it back. Well, it turned out the guy said it was 98% less of the energy used. So if you have to form a new bottle, rather than recycle that bottle, it takes 98% less of the energy than it would to form it in the first place. But there would be a rumour out there that we don't even recycle, because if you recycle it costs more energy, and these are the things that literally mess this system up.
Oh no, that's it. But like here's an example of when you say about why the system is built to make it hard for you, right? If you drink water, you've no fountains. Ireland has no water fountains. Now we're starting, we're getting them. We're getting them now. Yeah. And it's great. It's brilliant. But so it's really hard for you to do the right thing. So you can bring your reusable bottle. Do you know what I mean? Go about your business. Fill it up when you leave the house. But if you drink all the water, or you go running for long runs like I do, you have to carry all the water you need with you. Do you know, which is extra waste when you're running. But it's just it's how the system pushes back all the time.
Like why don't we plan a bicycles like route that has these fountains on it? These running routes that has these fountains on it, like builds the way they build everything else to fit and go around their body. Yeah, should build the environments to go around their body as well.
Everything is just makes it so hard for you to do the right thing, and that's why then people just go, I just don't have the time, or I'm annoyed, or I'm fed up with it.
Are the true tyrants in this the plastic companies and the oil companies in the planet? So if we were a judge and jury for the planet,
Yeah.
And we had these. Do we have them up for treason? Is this what? Are they facing the death penalty?
When I rule the world.
You know what I'm saying? If someone's a real wolf and it'd be sorted anyway. A lot of people take no shit.
I'll probably put them off on an island somewhere. That's going to suffer from sea level rises and go, yeah, well, you did it.
Yeah,
You know?
like as it's coming up, that'd actually be the proper. She's onto something there. That's the proper punishment where the water's coming up slowly.
Figure your own way out. I suppose up there for me would be the tobacco companies are, I suppose, the arch villains.
They are.
Right? They have been for years. And then the oil
They
companies.
have more and environment and all of them. The pharmaceutical companies as well.
The plastic companies are like the worst. And because it's coming from a gas now, like a lot of plastic is made from fracked gas, which is really energy intensive and produces a huge carbon footprint in just getting it out of the ground. We've banned it in Ireland, which is brilliant, but Fine Gael are looking to put what's called an LNG terminal. So that's liquid nitrogen gas, and bring it in from the States and store it here. And they're saying, oh, we need this because we need energy security. But so basically we've banned fracking because it pollutes water. It can cause, subsidence and really, really damaging for the environment. But we're saying, but it's okay to do that in communities in America and import it here. So I'd encourage people to, again, contact your government and say, we don't want, we're not fracking here, but we don't want your fracked gas coming in either.
Humans are going to be...
you might have seen the videos of people where they can light they turn their tap on and literally they can, with a lighter, the methane that's coming out and they can light it. And again, that's my point about working class communities that don't have, power, that they're trampled all over across the world. So these are communities where, Flint is another one where the water was poisoned as well.
And it was poisoned in a way that it was grand.
Yeah.
They wrecked a problem that didn't need to be fixed. Am I right?
But those who can afford to go and buy their bottled water, but, so it's ordinary families
that's
that
on
are just
11/9 if you haven't seen it. It's a documentary on Netflix. Not 9/11, 11/9, because I thought I'd seen it as well. So I've seen that one. Oh no, actually. How weird is that the dates match up, isn't it? The dates match up because Donald Trump was appointed president or something on the 11th of the 9th, and then 9/11 happened. And it's all very close and it's all weird, you know what I mean? How them numbers just randomly land on the same day.
You think too hard, you see.
I think very hard.
You're trying to find links.
Very hard. Yeah, sometimes I find them. Robin finds them too. Yeah. I want to go into another situation that the Stardust. So I know you were involved in this in the campaign for this early back, and then so this is being reopened. So can you explain what the Stardust was, because a lot of people would
and it's really important for the next generations to know about the Stardust because it was a fire on Valentine's night in a nightclub out in the north side of the city. And again, a working class community. And we really believe that the reason why they still haven't got justice to this day is because they were working class. They weren't the kids of barristers or lawyers, or they weren't the kids of parents who could hire the best legal representatives. But it was a very, very famous nightclub. And Dublin in the 80s didn't have very many places to go. So a lot of people would have travelled, even from the south side, over to the Stardust because they'd had the best gigs. Do you know what I mean? They had big bands on. But Valentine's night, 1981, over 800 people were in the building, but 48 died in a horrific fire that spread rapidly, and over 200 were injured. Some of the bodies they weren't even identified until years later by DNA. So the families came to me in 2017 because they'd seen the campaign I'd run on Ibrahim, the young Tallaght lad who was in prison in Egypt, and he'd come home and they just said, look, you seem to kind of have a knack for running campaigns. Could you give us a hand? So it was I came on board and said, look, we'll do what we can. But the first thing was get them a good lawyer. And Dara Mackin, the young lawyer from Belfast who represented Ibrahim's family as well, came on board. And it's one of those where I was a kid, what was I when Stardust happened, 4 or 5 years old. You just grew up knowing that the Stardust was something awful that had happened. Yeah. I should have said the reason why the injuries were so bad and that so many died was that the fire exits were chained. They were locked and they had bars on the windows in the bathroom. So they changed the laws. The Stardust was kind of responsible for a huge reform of fire safety laws. But still, to this day, in the anniversary this year, someone sent me a photograph of a bar in Athlone that had chains on the fire exits, which is why I was saying it's so important that young people remember this and kind of go, because like we grew up with it, so you sort of went into nightclubs and you kind of go, no, that's not right, you can't have a chain on the doors, because you remembered this, like the Stardust. But there's a whole generation there that don't remember that, and maybe aren't thinking of the idea of like fire exits being blocked, or just to be aware of their surroundings. But when you started talking to the families and you hear how badly they were treated and the cover-ups, and talk about conspiracies, like this is Ireland's Hillsborough. It was a working class community that were the first inquiry found, that was set up really quickly after the fire, rush job, found that, so even though they had no evidence for how the fire started, and they'd no evidence to support it, they came out that it said it was probably arson. So effectively, basically saying, you did this to yourselves, So they, and a whole community then were tired with kind of going, well, who did it? My kids are dead because somebody in our own community started a fire. And like for a community, that's a horrible thing to do. And that's kind of, I suppose, what spurred them on to continue campaigning for 38 years to correct the record. So that was the first thing, that they were kind of tarred with that brush for years. Then they had another inquiry where they kind of looked at the evidence again. They said, okay, well, really there was no evidence to support arson. So they removed that from the finding. But they didn't kind of find anybody culpable, even though the fire exits were locked. But because the finding of arson, the owners of the building were able to sue. So they got huge payouts.
They got insurance.
They got insurance money. Then the arson was dropped. Then, there's just so many different things along the way that you sort of go, Jesus, like this is one cover-up after another cover-up, like really corrupt stuff. But like one of the women, Antoinette Keegan, who was in the fire, lost her 2 sisters. And she was very badly hurt, and like she was in hospital for 2 weeks. Her parents were told not to tell her sisters had died because they were afraid she could die from the shock of it. So her parents were going down to the grave, mourning their 2 daughters, changing their clothes out of their mourning clothes, because at the time, again, the 80s, people would have wore black for a length of time, and going in and visiting their daughter and saying, no, they're grand, they're in another hospital. And, and she found out by accident through the priest who was coming around visiting the victims, and the priest just went, oh no, your 2 sisters died. So that's how she found it. So that. But the reason why I bring
You're never the same.
Never the same. The reason why I bring up Antoinette is because she survived the fire. She has a lived experience of what happened that night. Where she saw the fire, everything about the exits. She's never been asked to give evidence. Never once. There's a woman who phoned the fire brigade at the time and said at 1:34, I think it was, in the morning, and said, there's a fire in the roof of the Stardust. And about 10, 12 minutes later, there's another call from inside the Stardust saying there's a fire in the Stardust. She's never been asked to give evidence, and her evidence is so crucial because it shows the fire started in the roof.
And she's seen it.
And she's seen it. A taxi driver also called in. They've never testified. So you've had 2 inquiries, you've had a review of the evidence of the 2 inquiries, and still to this day, there's people out there who's going, no, nobody has ever come and asked me, what did I see that night? So
it's similar to Grenville as well, at the Grenville Tower.
Exactly,
council
council estates.
Like how many people died in that?
Yeah.
We don't even know, do we?
And they're still homeless.
Yeah.
They still haven't housed the people who died in the Grenville fire. So, and
there's
actually, it's interesting you bring up Grenville
because
the barrister who represented the Hillsborough families is now come on board to work with the Stardust families, and the forensic fire experts who are looking after Grenville. They're now come on board to help the Stardust families as well. So they've said that with the technology you have now, you can recreate and get kind of as close as possible to determining what caused the fire and where it started. But most people will tell you that it started in the roof. They had an illegal storage space that was up there. They were storing cooking oil, because you remember those days in the 80s, you got your chicken curry. Yeah. If you had a late license, you had to serve food. Yeah. So there was cooking oil up there, but loads of cleaning products. So and lots of people would tell you that the Stardust always had electrical issues. Lights would flicker on and off. Anybody who DJ'd there or played music would tell you it was a nightmare because you'd be doing your sound checks and the sound would go. So the most theory, and this is what we hope will come out, is that it was an electrical fire, started in the roof and spread quickly because you had a whole storage space of flammable materials that just it spread. And at the time they'd also use carpet tiles for the walls. So they'd used stuff that they shouldn't have been using that wasn't suitable. But so basically what's happened in the last week is that the Attorney General has said that they will grant a new inquest, which is how Hillsborough eventually got the truth out as well. So rather than an inquiry where it depends on which judge, it depends on which witnesses are called, they sort of dictate how it's going to go. An inquest is like a court, so you call your witnesses, and at least just to establish the truth, and then possibly from that, then there may be the scope to press charges for people. But for the families, what they'll tell you is, we just want the truth on the public record, like in Hillsborough. We didn't start this fire. Yeah. There was nothing we could have done to save our loved ones. Do you know what I mean? That's like the doors were locked, the windows were barred. You know,
and thought that them thoughts never go. Like if that was any of my family and my sons, or my thoughts would never go where their thoughts were at that time when this was all happening, and getting to a door and realising it was locked, and like the heart dropped from that. And people alone.
Running on top of each other, like and like the panic. The people fall on the ground, and you're running over. The lights went out, like as Antoinette would say, like she, it's 38 years later, she still sleeps with the light on and a radio. Because she said her memory is everything going black and the music stopping.
And this sounds like a fault from electricity. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, well that's what they will say, that's what they really believe, is that it was an electrical fault. But hopefully at least the inquest will give everybody a chance to testify and to get all of that evidence out, but also all of the way they've been treated over the years. Like, they weren't able to take civil actions for compensation because they were threatened with losing their houses. So in the end, Charlie Haughey era, they were told, we'll go in and we'll do one big settlement and you'll all get some compensation. And the problem was it was kind of done behind closed doors, so nobody knew who got what, and that caused tension in the community, because then if someone gets a new car or goes on holidays, they're kind of going, did they get more than I did? Or so it was all of that tension. But then even with their counselling, they were told which counsellor they had to attend and how many sessions they would get, and they were literally brought into a room and go, okay, pull your top up and show us what your injuries.
That's not how counselling works, isn't it?
So they've just been treated awful for decades, and for me it just was a privilege to get to know them all, and their stories are incredible. And I think for anybody, when this inquest starts, you will be glued to it and watching, and it's going to be really tough for them because it's going to bring everything back out.
Absolutely.
But I think for the population of Ireland will be sitting every night and tuning in and going, I can't believe that this happened in Ireland and people were treated so badly and had to fight for so long.
The amount of stuff that has happened in this country.
Many of the parents are dead now, but those who are still alive are in their 80s.
And do you know what, Lynn? Fair play to you for coming on, and fair play to you for sticking up for people like this, because the mad thing is, in working class communities, and not only working class communities, because working class and middle class is very close in Ireland now.
Yeah, well, we're kind of we've the really wealthy and then everybody else.
Absolutely,
now at this stage,
you know what I mean? So we're kind of in a shit situation. So we all need to stick together in the way of us hating each other and all. Then those are gone, because this only affects one person. The people at the top is the only one that benefits from that. And I'm trying to say that even the people that the middle class people support it, they don't care about you either. And you'll see this with these new, like they're trying to boost this RTE thing coming in. You see this trying to put a household charge in, so our ERTE come up. Listen,
so we can pay the big wages for
life is getting better, and the idea of like being able to watch like people use the computer, they don't have tellies, and it's like that law, and they're going to counter another one with this. It's a joke, but it was an absolute pleasure to have you. And if anybody from the Stardust and that wanted to come in, any other days come in, we'd love to have them on here, and to be idea to be able to tell us some things that we don't know about.
I mean, even just like the one last thing that blew my mind was there's only been 2 people who've faced any sort of criminal charge because of the Stardust, and one of them was Antoinette Keegan's father, because he punched the owner of the nightclub one night, and Christy Moore, who wrote the song They Never Came Home, and they got an injunction against the song.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Christy Moore's been a huge supporter of the families over the years.
Christy's an animal. You can come on too, Christy. You're allowed. So before we wrap it up, loads of messages. Make sure you say something about this. So Bellator was an absolute success the weekend, and I want to say congratulations to all of the guys that came up when he used four, absolutely amazing. Peter Queally coming back from that head kick down the loss. I was watching a lot of the things going through Liverpool Airport. I had it on the back of the buggy. It was the best goes. But it was he's did incredible. All of the Irish fighters on it. For Bellator as the promotion, a lot of the complaints have been this television thing. This is mental. People are literally disgusted that the second biggest promotion in the world is messing where you have to go to 6 different channels to sort this stuff out. Have you get loads on the No Shame page as well?
Yeah, we got a lot of messages. I think it was like a Tarantino movie. It started in the middle and then it went back to the start and then it went to the end.
This is what happened.
And then there was one fight in particular there was one fight after Gallagher's fight.
And that's called a swing bout, if anyone doesn't know about that. So it's called a swing bout because if it's on the card, I actually feel so bad for them. It was Kieran Clark doing his first professional fight, has worked so hard to get to this moment. But then the idea of the television, it messes things around. So a swing bout is that you might be on or you might not be on. You might be on after. So when everyone's walking out of the stadium, you're going out to fight. Ugh. And it's a horrible, horrible thing. I've seen people having to do it before, and so that's what the idea with that. The slot between the main event and the co-main event, which was Danny Nealon. So Danny Nealon, a 115 female fight. We've had Danny Nealon on. You can see the idea where Danny's like brilliant, but it's a lot of confusion that goes on in between this. So if anybody gives you shit from Bellator, try and sort it out, because you're losing loads of fans over it. You're frustrating a lot of people, and not only that, the professionals.
Sounds worse than the RTE player.
Listen, let me tell you, if you want to see politics, get into martial arts. That's what you know. If you get a black belt in martial arts, you are a black belt in politics, because it's half me. Yeah, but that was episode 96. Look after yourself.